and welcome to the House of Asher. I am your host, Steve E. Asher. I'm glad you guys are here. Was thinking about my parents and grandparents and some of the stories that I used to hear around the hearth around Christmas time. There were a lot of ghost stories that were passed around in the wee hours, especially when you're snowed in, it's dark, the days are really short, and, everybody doesn't think about it. It's the dead of winter. It's literally a time of death, of fallow fields, and more or less people did what they had to in a little bit of light, and beyond that, they, try to just keep themselves busy. And in the colder, darker parts of the night, again, there would be strange stories. And I remember my mom, whose people were from the Appalachian area, or Appalachia, however you pronounce it, and they told stories of setting up with the dead. Now, this tradition historically was really prominent in Appalachia, where a lot of times neighbors or family kept a vigil with deceased person's body at home until burial. This might be an aunt, a young child. It could be anybody, someone from a parishioner from their local church. But the bottom line is this served the practical purpose of preventing spirits from lingering and ensuring that the person, their spirit, was truly gone. Now, this is before embalming, okay? And moreover, a lot of times this would offer comfort and provide a little bit of, community support through, food and help with chores. This wasn't just an overnight. A lot of times this could go for several days, and this included, sharing grief, telling stories, and it's just such a different time than now. It's a form of a wake, really, if you go back to it, which, ties in with European customs, fulfilling spiritual, social, and practical needs. And this is just one of these weird things that happen. And I think if we were closer to this tradition still, I think we would have a healthier relationship with death. We're scared to death of it, and we run from it. And I think at the end of the day, we're not just doing the dead a disservice, we're doing ourselves a disservice, because this is one of those things, obviously, that happens, and it's going to continue to happen. And everyone that's pretty much been born has died, except for a handful of, exceptions. But, this also can tie in with people making sure that somebody wasn't in a coma. Maybe they've had some sort of sleeping sickness, which has happened. A lot of times there would be music telling stories. They would sing and just more or less try to have a supportive, even though it was a somber situation. They would try to provide some sort of atmosphere. And what's really weird is, as time went on, funeral homes became more of a thing, and embalming process. And so the practice of setting up with them became a lot less of a traditional need, community-based situation. Now, I have heard, now this is going to get a little dark, so if you don't want to hear it, maybe this is a good time to tune out. But a lot of people would have pets. A lot of people might have dogs or cats. And in the old days, a lot of times they would have mice and vermin. And you really wanted to keep those away from your dead, because although that's someone's meemaw, they could easily become somebody's 2 a.m. snack. And that's just the long and the short of it. But I wonder if any of you guys have had any sort of experience heard stories, anything like that. I know that, again, before the tradition of embalming, there would be people and they would hear death rattles. Now, a lot of people now connect that with a person in the last throes of life, even though they're kind of gone brain-wise, their body is still holding on. And they might have these sort of reactive breaths. But that's not what I'm talking about, guys. What I'm talking about is you're out on the table. More often than not, you're on a table in a viewing room or a formal dining room back in the day. And you're sitting there. It's about 1:30 or 2 in the morning. Things have started to kind of wind down a little bit. So the last one or two who have taken the graveyard shift to watch this body and assuring its safety gets a little fright. Maybe the body lets out a low gurgling growl. Maybe the eyes flutter. Maybe the body spasms. Maybe it jumps half up off the table and falls back down. Most people in that time understood this. Now, I've known people who have worked as morticians, and they would bring in bodies, the coroners and whatnot. And in the processes of those early stages of death, the brain would still fire. Certain neurons would respond. There'd be intermuscular changes. Maybe they'd grind their teeth. Maybe they would do all weird manners of contortions. And that's pretty freaking scary. I know if I'm driving a coroner's vehicle or something like that, and I start seeing things moving around in the bag, it's time to call the Winchesters in, get some salt or something. I don't care for that much. But again, we are so disconnected. But I am curious what you guys think. I also am curious if you guys have went to check out steveasher.studio. That is where you can find out about my books and podcast and yada yada and all that good stuff. You can also go to Amazon for my latest book on reincarnation and near-death experiences. I think you'll dig it. I was kind of surprised on some of the weird stuff I found in doing that. And I am still working on books. And yes, I'm trying to do some voiceover work and all this other neat stuff. So, a lot's going on right now. So, I do want to hear from you guys. Please like, subscribe, share this if you can. You may be listening to this on YouTube. You may be listening to it on Spreaker or some of the other podcast sites. But any little thing you can do to help, I never ask for a penny. I just ask if you guys can share some of this with your friends and loved ones. But I don't know what time of day or night you're listening to this. But as quick as you can, and as soon as it's sunny, even on these cold, blistery days, I want you to get out there and enjoy that sunshine. Get some of that on your face. Enrich yourself. Heal yourself. Ground yourself. Take in what light you can get in this time of year, because it is sparse. But please make sure to, as the sun sets behind the pines and your shadows grow long, make sure to look down the hallway. Maybe look in that viewing room. Make sure that body's not a-twitching and coming up for swinging. But it's okay to be afraid, because there is knowledge in fear. And sometimes we have to go through it to go through it. But it's okay, because there is learning in fear. But above all, my dear friends, I want to thank you for these little segments. And please, above all else, have a wonderful holiday season. Love the one you're with. Embrace the new year and all its challenges and gifts that's presented for us. But above all, my friends, remember, stay scared.